welcome back to Dev Game Club, weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's crying out for the angels of darkness to rise to glory.
Tim Longo. So I'm the villain, I see.
Well, you had that same hairstyle, so...
Oh, fair enough, yeah. I do wish, yeah. No, not about my hairstyle. I wish they used him more.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like he was on TV screens and stuff. I actually don't even know what his name is.
I don't either. It's General something with a K or something.
Yeah, right.
It's like Krieg, whatever.
He's very Kurtz.
He is very Kurtzian.
Yeah, but and then you've, of course, if you do that optional stuff, which we'll talk about, we're talking about Beyond Good and Evil, by the way.
Yeah, we sure
joining
are.
us for some reason at this episode, and
no one is joining us for this episode.
No, I don't think so.
The fall off is like the first episode is the highest, and then the fourth episode is always the lowest.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, people aren't in it for the whole. Yeah, let's see what they're talking about. I've got enough of that.
Yeah. Beyond Good and Evil. Who cares? Well, you should care because there's some very cool things about this game, and then some not cool things about this game.
That's very true.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, he shows up in that one optional HQ mission if you go do that one
right
at the end. But other than that, until like the end, and you see him on monitors occasionally. I guess technically, now that I think about it, he is talking at the very beginning of the game when they're talking about the DOMs, right?
Yes.
He's the one over the loudspeaker. So you do see him right away, but not like as a villain.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to do is.
Yeah. He's kind of hidden away for so long. And then there's like, you discover at the end of the slaughterhouse, there's a little snippet or something
of
him talking with the
DOMs?
with the DOMs. I think
that was on the moon.
Was that on the moon? Oh, wow.
When you get to that one.
Oh yeah, that's the clip you get on the moon that you're going to broadcast. Oh wow, yeah. They really bury him. He's pretty hidden. I mean, I think that there's a risk of that sort of thing in the game generally, where you might kind of lose track of some things. Like you kind of lose track of the fact that she's in charge of an orphanage. Until it's a big story moment. I lost track of, and I remembered this about the difficulty of the game at the end, which we'll return to. But there's a section where you're fighting all these ships in space, and this time it was trivial for me. And it's because the first time I played it, by the time I got to that, I forgot that you had the alternate fire.
Oh yeah, right. That's all.
And I'm like, I can't do this. Like I'm getting killed, left and right in this. I remember that battle taking me. I was like, so not looking forward to it.
You did that without the alternate fire?
Correct. on the GameCube originally.
Wow.
And it was not easy. I will tell you now. It took many, many tries, and I was to the point of just like ready to, crush the controller.
Should have got an achievement for that.
There are no achievements in the Nintendo ecosystem still, and I applaud them. I think they're right not to adopt some of those things super quickly like others do. But as much as I enjoy
them within the games, right? Like they do them, they make them per game, basically.
Yeah. But not every game has to have them. It's not a big system thing. Yeah, I'm in agreement with their approach. If it makes sense for the game, it makes sense for the game. I'm sure
they're glad they have your endorsement.
No, I'm sure they are. I hardly ever play their game, so the endorsement is what they get.
Wow, you're not even giving them your money. You're just like, yeah. All right.
Well, no, I have a Switch. I have a number of games for it. But anyway. Back to the game at hand. I think that's one of the things that I find with this game, on replaying it, is that there's a lot of things that feel like are easy to lose track of. Story bits, things aren't foregrounded very much. Maybe that's I don't know, maybe they're trusting to the intelligence of the player, which, your mileage may vary. Just some of the
Was that a commentary on players?
No, it was not. It was just like
some of them players.
Some players will be good with that, and some players won't. No, I just meant in terms of what people will connect with.
I thought that was a joke about my memory.
It was not. No, I mean, it's my memory is clearly the problem here, because there was actually a point in playing it where there's a place you can get to. I forget what's even in there, but under the sort of on the outskirts of the city, you can go. There's another like tunnel you can go into, and there's one of those guard, things that float in the sky, kind of UFOs that come pick you up and move you if you try to enter this spot. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, how do you get through this? Like, how do you get past this? Totally forgot. Like, that was this week. And then I did something else. I was like, oh, right. I have this other thing I can do. I could get to the factory. Why could I do that? Oh, that's right. Pey'j installs. Oh, yeah, I have a gun that does that, I mean, it's just like, because you don't do these things very frequently, because there are so many different activities you could be doing with your time, it's easy to lose track of them. And that's maybe the downside of something that has so many options and verbs that are just kind of particular to the situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I think, and it's also a good example of the era in that games have gotten better at dealing with that. Yeah. Even if there is a lot of discrete, I'm trying to think of an example, but it's not coming to me right this minute. But even if there is a lot of discrete sort of one-offs or not one-offs, but things you use infrequently, I think we've just been better at dynamically reminding you of things or whatever it is, even in the level design, I think. But again, if we consider this game sort of a trailblazer in certain ways, then forgive them some of that. But it's what dawned on me this session was because I know we'll talk about the slaughterhouse maybe ending. I don't know if there's much to talk about there, but I definitely didn't. I don't think I made it through the slaughterhouse now that I finished the game, because the ship stuff I don't remember. The fact that you're flying over the whole island was kind of mind blowing. I was like, wait, is this happening? Is this happening right now? So like kudos to them and it Beyond Good and Evil 2 makes sense now.
Yeah, like right. Yeah.
If you didn't play Beyond Good and Evil 1, if you didn't finish Beyond Good and Evil 1, I'm sure you're looking at Beyond Good and Evil 2 stuff and like, why are they doing all this space combats? What's going on here?
Yeah, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah, where was the inspiration for why go in this direction when I thought if I played, say, half of the first game and I thought it was a character action dungeon game,
Right.
Not this kind of, fly over a planet kind of thing. So I was delighted that it got that it went that far and that they committed to that bit as well. And we're not afraid in this day and age to do, like they've already built it because of the hovercraft, I guess. And they of course did, they have a lot of tricks, talk about smoke and mirrors for making that flight over the island work. Cause there's probably just a different loaded, differently loaded in kind of set of things happening.
Yeah. I mean, they close off the main city as well with a kind of shield generator or something.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So you can't even land in the, where the pedestrian area would be or in the main canal. Right. It's literally hidden from you by this dome. It's got some alpha, like you can see through it, but it's like, there's so much that's not that it's like, you're only getting the suggestion that there's, a city down there and what it probably is like, 4 cubes, 4 beige cubes, or something like that to give you the sense.
It's clever. Through. Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about Beyond Good and Evil 2 later, but it's funny how similar some of that stuff is, but huge missed opportunity with like, I was convinced that the spaceship was going to be the lighthouse.
Oh, yeah.
And it would have been perfect. It was just like, then the lighthouse takes,
Yeah.
But
it does launch out of the lighthouse top, but.
Does it come out of the top? Are you sure?
Oh, no, it comes out of the side of the hill. That's right.
Yeah, there's the hill.
It's on the other side. Yeah. It's not the lighthouse.
The lighthouse gets destroyed.
The lighthouse gets destroyed. I think you already have the ship, though, at that point, don't you? Oh, you might not. Yeah, actually, that stuff can happen out of order.
Oh,
in different orders. Yeah. So for me, I think I already had it.
No, I didn't have the ship actually.
Okay. Yeah. You can go get all the pearls, buy all the ship stuff, and then go do the lighthouse. It's after you get a certain part, the lighthouse will happen, but you have to go there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's interesting. The pseudo open world kind of ness of this game is really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, it's I would say Ocarina of Time kind of scale, type of methodology there. So it's there's a lot more parallels then. But the whole like the number of surprises that in this last section that even just going to the moon, some of the things you do on the moon, how different it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a shame. I know that a lot of people did not see the end of this game. I think mainly because of the slaughterhouse. But
slaughterhouse really has listen to last week's episode for my thoughts. But the biggest thing is just I've had these connected maps and could get everywhere, and now I can't figure out how to get from this area to that area, and it involves getting in the hovercraft and figuring out, I guess, one's sort of a puzzle, I think, to get into, right? Because you have to he has to lower and raise that gate or something.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that one's just plain tricky. The other one's like, you have to go up this weird ramp and kind of notice, and it's above eye level where you need to go in. So it's tricky to see, especially because on the hovercraft map, you can't see it. And then one's kind of obvious, obviously I got to go in here. And that's just, that's really unfortunate, because I'm sure for a lot of people that's a real stopping point. For me, it was nearly a stopping point. I'm like, is this broken? I was literally what is happening? Because I didn't play the HD edition in the past, or whatever. Maybe they just messed it up. I had no idea. So
yeah, the one thing I will say, because obviously last week's episode helped me some, because you kind of gave me a heads up. I was only in the first wing, which is probably the well, I think you can do them out of order, right?
You can do them any order, yeah.
Yeah. So I was in the one that was probably most obvious. I think it was the north wing. But maybe it was because I was looking for it, but one thing I tried to do based on the challenges you were having was trust the level design in a way. And I totally agree with you that there were some things working against the player, like sightlines and the map stuff. Like the map stuff was definitely bad. But once I actually chose not to rely on the map and just let the flow of things just push me, it ended up becoming a little bit more obvious what to do.
I didn't have any trouble in any individual section, really, other than that one puzzle with the gate. Just figuring out to do that was very non-intuitive to me. But other than that, once I got into them, I had no troubles and did kind of just go with the flow. But it was just finding them, finding the way into the thing that you need to do was very difficult. I think part of that too was that, they've taught you how to solve, the barrier that they used. So they used the electrical barriers in the factory, and it was bash a robot or push something into it to break the stream of electricity. Those were your solutions. And in this third one, the one with the we had to raise and lower the gate. It's go out into another area and find another way so you can just go around the whole thing. It was just a bridge too far for me to figure out quickly. It's just I'm looking at the hall into that room, trying to shoot the thing. How do I deal with how do I make the robot blow this thing up? It won't come after me. Because there was a robot in there, I was well, I know what to do with a robot and electricity. I've been taught to do this thing. And even though he says there's a whatever, because the game's kind of, doesn't have a lot of detail, it was very hard to see what he was talking about. It's where's that camera pointing? Because there's no real landmarks. It's just a hole in a wall somewhere. I don't know what he's talking about. So and you can only see it once, or it triggers infrequently. I think you can see it more than once. I don't know. There were a lot of frustrations about that one in particular.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So anyway, we did. So after the slaughterhouse, basically, you go back to HQ
for Iris.
You find out that Pey'j, Iris, and then you find out that Pey'j is the chief.
Yep,
which is amazing. And like, of course he is.
Of course he is.
I mean, he is. I don't know. This is hyperbole, but I feel like he's one of the most memorable video game characters. For if you've played this game or even watched the videos, I think you may not always know his name, but you're like, oh, the pig.
Yeah.
Like he's just such a. Especially, I went back and watched that teaser trailer in the desert. And it's like, who thinks of this stuff? Where he's like
Michel Ancel. Yeah.
But so that was a great. They just right up until the end, they just didn't. They didn't shy away from doing new things, and saying yes, as we talk about a lot, and surprising me. I just was. I mean, the camera got worse over time.
Yeah.
and because it they had to customize it based on all these different crazy things they wanted to do.
Right. And that programmer probably had 6 other things he was responsible for.
Oh man!
In that day and age, right?
Yeah, that programmer, the one camera programmer they had.
Yeah, one part of one camera, one programmer, person. Yeah, I mean that's the issue back then, is that you had no specialization. So I mean these days, if you game this scope, you could probably have one person who dealt with all the cameras and figured all that stuff out and made it more systemic and like could see those things, but it's tough. It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, and I think, we've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast for various, especially third-person games, but it was also a highly underestimated thing.
Yes.
Because we didn't know. Maybe Mark HH knew, but most people like, oh yeah, we'll figure the camera out. It's like, it's actually no. It's a lot of discovery especially when we didn't have a model. I actually wish, I don't know, they didn't have a lock on, right? If they had a lock on, I didn't find it.
No, I don't think it has a lock on. Yeah, I mean, she does kind of auto face.
Yeah, but it's so squishy.
Yeah, and it's very hard then to like see everything you want to see. I mean, what it's doing is often not helping you. It's often hurting you as much as it's helping you. Mm-hmm. So it can be very, very difficult. Like I think it orbits around the center between you and the target it thinks you want. So it can be really, really frustrating. When you fight, remember somewhere you fought these things that were jumping over your head. It might have been it was probably in the
slaughterhouse. Oh my gosh, that was the worst.
Yeah, painful.
Manta ray things.
Yeah, awful. And you're supposed to, I think, duck whenever they jump. That's like what you're supposed to do to not take damage. You duck and then you slam, you hit them as soon as they land. That the game is not built to support.
I think that probably was the place I died the most, that one silly combat. And I could not believe what the camera was doing. I could not believe it. I was like, why? Yeah, I have no control. I can't see.
Yeah, it's a mess. Did you end up giving them, I guess mostly Double H, any of your PA1s or anything like that?
Yeah, I did. I gave him, I think, 2. The nice thing I did write a note about this. The nice thing about that is that and I think in general, I'm impressed with their inventory system and all that kind of stuff, because you kind of give people whatever. You can try to give people whatever. It's very much like an adventure game, right? Where it's like you just have a thing, you can give it to whoever you want.
And you also take them back. So when I went to the final battle, I was like, "Oh, I'll just take those back. Thank you."
You
won't be needing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Back and forth, which I had not known. I'm sure I didn't know that either back in the day, and I probably split them a lot more equally and didn't know I could take them back. That was a revelation to me. I'm like, there must be a way to do this, because when you pick them up in the environment, I think you can use them. So that would be your opportunity to give them. There's not too many of those. So because when you buy them, it just uses them like automatically. So it's like, so they weren't. I was just kind of thinking through that. I was like, well, there must be a way to do this in the interface, and I went and looked. Sure enough, so that was kind of cool. Yeah, and then I put them all back on her for the final run.
Yeah, the persistence of stuff like that is pretty impressive. It's such a weird, cool, interesting hybrid of a game. There's just so much going on. So I applaud them in that regard, as we've been talking about probably with every episode. And then I think from the description of the lighthouse to the end, just keeps, the mirror puzzle stuff, which you've never dealt with before. Though I had some pretty frustrating moments with that. Because I was convinced that I had to do a thing that was not what I had to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that can happen. I had a similar moment where I'm like, how does this can't? Oh, it must be no, that's not the thing I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, I thought, I thought I had to keep powering using the beam to power once in the room where you get Pey'j.
Right. Like, how am I going to do this too?
How am I going to get this beam to continue to the lift that you see through the glass?
Right.
That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
but it turns out all you have to do is walk backwards and trigger a cutscene.
Yep.
And then Pey'j wakes up.
Yep.
I was like, oh, geez. And that, and actually, when I was stuck there, I remember vividly having a thought, oh, this better not just be a trigger for a cutscene. And so then I was like, I'm going to configure these mirrors. I got this. I'm going to figure this crazy star pattern out. I'm going to get that beam to go in there. Nope, there's a cutscene. And then you go back to that. And then there's a little opening where you can go to where you can sidle past the window. I'm just like, come on. But that was, that definitely is an of the era solution.
Yeah, for sure.
Because narrative is so important and you want that. But I was touched. The whole Pey'j stuff was touching, and I really wish Pey'j was in the game more.
Yeah.
To be honest, he was gone for 2 levels basically, right?
Yeah.
And if you do
and I was going to say all the extra content you're doing too is with Double H, and as much as I like Double H and I find him really charming and very French and stuff, I do really find that character very endearing. He's no Pey'j. Like when I started up the game again, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was like, oh, that's right, this guy. But before I even put it in, I was like, oh yeah, Pey'j. All right, cool. I'm gonna get some more time with Pey'j. As soon as I saw him and he was like kind of like had amnesia or whatever, Double H, I was like, oh yeah, I remember the whole thing with this guy. And then it was fun to watch it all play out again. But I, if you'd asked me, Beyond Good and Evil, I would have said Pey'j and Jade, and then and you go to space at the end. It's wild. Would have been kind of my my recollection.
Yeah, lifting the ship off. We should talk about some of the side content maybe, but lifting the ship off and getting that whole thing to happen is just pretty epic for this game. And then they did a good job, like even just the flying from the planet to the moon and kind of seeing the planet in the skybox and, and kind of all that kind of smoke and mirrors of the era, which was really well done. They had a couple custom cameras, which added to the drama, frustrated the gameplay. And then I think to your point about, and what we were talking about with the villain, the other thing about the DOMs is like, it's another sort of undermined kind of story element. Just about the Dom, because then you finally meet that weird entity at the end. I still couldn't tell you what was going on there. She's the chosen one, so of course the main character is in this era. That was like the only thing people could think of, including myself probably. So like it did feel epic, but there was also like, and I guess some of it is just they were trying to set it up for a sequel, especially with the post-credit scene, which we'll talk about later maybe. But so maybe they had a plan, but Clearly, they had a plan, but
I think more like leaving the door open. I don't know about a plan. Like in this day and age, I don't think there was a lot of like.
But there was so much about her, like, all that dialogue about her parents and her having the abilities, and she's not who she thinks she is.
Right, but I think Michel Ancel sort of like thinks about the whole world and like who is this character, like, and explains all that stuff for himself, and that's like the background to the game, and he just draws on it when he needs it. Sort of like Tim Schafer does the same thing, I think. As far as like the characters are so much richer than what's actually in the game.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it's just kind of there in the background to draw on at any point. Yeah. But definitely, I think the post-credit scene is like, let's tease that we could do more, for sure. Like, not, absolutely.
Well, they just leave some, they put, I guess, here, put it a different way. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that he has a plan, like he has a plan.
Yeah.
And I think it is wise to draw upon what you need when you need it. Then my comment turns into they threw a lot of breadcrumbs at the very end.
Yeah, that's true.
That I wished would have been spread out a little bit more.
Yeah,
and I think I would have appreciated it more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think there was a build. There was no build to it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's kind of the flip side of like the positive when I was talking about the pearls and like being able to just jam in whatever side content you feel like. The flip side of that is that, unfortunately, that means you're likely going to dilute out all the narrative stuff.
Change the pacing.
Yeah. And, depending on when you do things, like things may just not even register, with the player because they're, they did this in between doing 4 looters caverns and 4 races, and so this story bit kind of like just totally, was a blip, and did not register because it was set amongst 2 hours of doing racing, or whatever.
But then the rewards for the optional content are also part of your key to get to the story content.
Yeah, right? It's true.
You don't have to do that, but if you say you don't find the volcano, or you think you have to grind all those things because you need the pearls because I don't know, didn't find the others. It's like it's very like very interesting that they combined. Basically they gated. It's rare today that optional content is also part of gated content.
Yeah.
That's we typically don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
but
for this reason.
Yeah, I guess so. But as a takeaway, it makes me think about like it's not one of my takeaways, but as a bonus takeaway, I'm like,
could you? Yeah, maybe there's a way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you? Why would you do that?
Yeah. What would you have to change about what they did to make that more consistent, so nothing felt like it didn't fit?
Yeah. There's got to be an example out there that I can't think of. But yeah, it's interesting kind of design question that I'd never thought about before. But I mean, they had the volcano. They had a couple things that were balancing mechanisms to get you the pearls you needed, of course, with the side content. So of course you had to find them. If you have the detector, then you're going to see, oh, there's a bunch of pearls on the top of the Black Isle. Like, what does that mean? Oh my God, I have a ship. Wait, I can fly to the top.
Yeah.
And
they do hint at it too when you get there's a rumor about it, I think, or something. I think you can ask somebody in town for rumors.
Cool. I didn't do that.
I can't remember where but I definitely spoke to somebody and they were like, I hear there's a pearl in the volcano. And I was like, in the volcano? And then when I was going around gathering pearls, I was like, I don't remember there being another entrance to the volcano. There's just the entrance to the Black Isle. But I went all the way around it. I'm like, no, there's not. And then I got the ship and I was like, right. Now I remember.
Yeah, I did the same thing. And there's also an animal or two up there. And, and on the map. And so I'm like, I was,
did you get
around.
all the animals?
I think I missed one.
Oh man, rough.
Unfortunately. Yeah. I think
and once you leave the planet, you can't,
Yeah. I
Can't
mean,
go back.
it was basically a time thing. Like, I'm sure
Yeah.
I actually did go back to the dungeons to check the map to see. So I'm actually not sure where it is then.
There's one in space.
Oh, well, that was it then. What? Wait, how?
There's a space thing.
Oh, that's it then. That's the one.
Yeah.
So that's one of the final pearls I didn't get.
Yeah, you have to do it. It's the most missable one. You have to do it your first when you're
On your
making
way.
the trip out. Yeah.
Oh my, that's rough. That's really rough. That's also a no-no these days, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, that's definitely a no-no. But yeah, I mean, I got 86 out of the 88 pearls. It's a lot. I just didn't do the Francis ones because I could not be bothered to spend the time at the air hockey table with the shoddy controllers. No way. I remember that being hard back then when I had a decent GameCube controller, and I just did not want to sit through that. But
yeah,
I did everything.
I don't blame you on that one. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, it was so close to. I mean, it's still a great game, but the camera stuff is so rough.
Yeah, it's a flawed gem.
Yeah, it's definitely a flawed gem, and but I mean, I'm glad that I finished it because I definitely am glad I got to see that ending stuff, and I was also very impressed with the variety that they had of the sort of
at the end
sequences.
Yeah, right? We should talk about those sequences, but a little behind the scenes note. We're recording on Tuesday this week because last night I'm like, "Are you good to record tonight?" He's like, "Well, I didn't finish." I'm like, You should finish. You don't have that far to go. But there's some big things that are about to happen, which I guess we should discuss now. Turns out we did have a lot of stuff to discuss. I was also worried that we wouldn't have tons of stuff to discuss. But yeah, you had basically done all the walking around stuff.
I stopped right when I was about to send the transmission.
Right. Yeah.
On the moon, So that basically is the last big thing before you
do a series of different challenges, basically. I guess the order is first you have to you get tractor beam. So you do like this trench run thing with General, what's his name. And you have to shoot out. It's basically like a rail shooter, I guess, where you have to shoot various targets on the
trench
ship.
Trench runs are good. Yeah. It's so funny how that is. It's like the game turns into all these other games for the last, except for a couple of the on-foot boss battles. But yeah. I mean, it's custom camera, right? Custom levels, custom, everything.
It's got to be a looping track, basically, because you're gonna, and it can't be obvious that it's looping, and it's not obvious that it's looping.
No, they did a great job.
They did a really good job of that. I was thinking when I was playing it, I was actually thinking of Uncharted. One of them has a section on a train. So I guess it's 2. Well, actually, I think 1 and 2 both have train sections. But anyway,
the one you're thinking of is 2, I think.
Yeah, where it's like, I mean, they're really on the train, and he's really going to this point, and the trains, they're not faking the train thing, which is really cool. And, I was thinking of that because I was because back in this day, the day of this game, which of course was only like 2 years before, maybe 3 years before the first Uncharted, there'd just be a looping section for this. And then I was watching it, I was like, yeah, but it's totally a good loop. Like, did not feel like a loop at all. I mean, you're very focused on the ship, but even so, pretty well done. So kudos.
Yeah, and it mixed it up. It used the alt fire. You didn't have to use it, but and I thought that sort of like the way it escalated was very clever too, where it kind of had different phases of the ship, the enemy ship, and then these beams that you had to kind of dodge and you didn't want to run into. And
you had to try not to run into the walls as well, so you had to like scrape by them so you could get to the other side of the ship to hit the targets on the other side of these beams. Very, very good stuff. Good ship design for that sort of challenge.
Yeah, and then there was that arena that you actually had to get back in the hoverboat.
Yeah.
which was also like, wow, go, like, good for you. Like, you're going to actually, and wasn't there even an on foot part of that too?
Yeah, you go in there at that point.
That's where you meet the colonel, right?
You meet the general, and you actually send the transmission, I think.
No, you're trying to destroy the tractor beam, right?
Oh yeah, you're destroying the tractor beam, right? And then you go send the message, and then you do the boss. Yeah, but you go in there, and there's a couple of DOMs, and you go and you fight them with your two. Now you've got your two buddies, both helping you, and then you go up into the area where you're gonna, turn off the tractor beam, and the guy's basically impaled because when you shot up his ship, it crashed into this building. So he's dying. And that's where the intro to the show came. This was
yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I don't know if it's a localization thing or what, but that's a very dramatic line that I was like, huh? Like, what do you, Angels of Dark? Where's?
Well, he's also splayed out like he's on a cross, more or less.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So there's definitely something going on there.
Just like religion came in all of a sudden, right?
Exactly.
In hell, and I was like, okay,
yeah. So what I suspect is like, this DOMS thing, is like its own religion, and there's basically this cult. But also, it's like got the power. It's got this power over life and death, because they've got the undead army. Like, a lot of this stuff is just not explained.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot there, and I've said this in previous episodes, but it's also, there's a lot there, but it's also very intriguing as somebody who loves this stuff, right? I want to know the reasons behind and what's going on, let alone, again, rewatch the Beyond Good and Evil 2 stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what is, so you get the tractor beam off, you reattach your ship.
Yep. The last time you'll do so.
Yeah, it's hard to even, there's so much that happens in this section, it's hard to remember it all, actually.
Yeah.
And then you
get in the dogfight.
Oh, the dogfight, right.
Yeah, with just dozens of ships.
Right. Oh, and then you have to land once they trap all the ships because all the rebels come.
The rebels come to help, and then it's a trap.
Yeah, totally.
So very. I mean, that was the whole thing, right? Tractor beam.
Yeah. They got the tropes.
Yep, they very much straight stole that. That's no moon. And so you get trapped up there, or they all get trapped up there, and you go in, and it's like, well, I'll take care of it. And then you have this huge, like, lore cutscene, and Pey'j gets hypnotized, I guess, and then Jade is getting hypnotized to take her power, and Double H, like, gets in the way. A lot of that was very clever. It's good character stuff, in the cutscene itself, but then the various stages of the boss battle I thought were pretty fun. This is against, like, the head priest, ancient DOMS thing. Hard to actually know what to call it.
Cosmic horror stuff.
Yeah, the cosmic horror. But, at first you have to get behind Double H to shoot the thing from behind him, because he's, preventing the beam from hitting you, because you can't hit the thing with your staff, or maybe you can, and I just couldn't.
No, I think you're right. That's
okay.
Because I tried many times, but because I of my aiming issues, I didn't want to have to shoot something.
Oh yeah.
But luckily, it was very forgiving. The target.
That one was pretty forgiving, but it's also like, who knows when the last time before that was that I shot something from the first person view. Yeah. Like, it was not a thing that I immediately reached to in my toolkit. Like, oh, I know how to bash things, and they're trying to signal. I mean, I think this is one of the usability issues that we've kind of solved by now. Most of the time, most games, most of the time, would put a prompt on the screen or whatever to remind you when you're not doing the thing.
Yeah.
That you can do the thing. Same with the secondary fire, or even just generally have the layout of what your controls are for that section.
Oh, well, I was going to say is you can, even in level design, right? Put a moat around the thing during that phase where it's clear you can't run up to it. You know what I mean? Like, there's other things you can do to where you're narrowing your options, but they definitely, you have to remind them, and hopefully, not to your point, you hadn't used it, you hadn't been forced to use it in a while. The even better solution is that you will have had
you force somebody to use it. Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is very
to get into the room, for example. Yeah. Classic thing to do. I mean, that's a very Nintendo thing to do.
Right.
Refresh what you're supposed to be able to do right before you have to do it. Force it on you in another way, in a low stress way, so that you can handle it when you're under stress. And that's definitely missing here in a lot of sections. You could have used the same thing with the missiles. So, the secondary fire back in the day, not this time. This time I was like, I got the secondary fire on lock, but poof, I remember how difficult I found that dogfight.
Yeah, that's crazy that you did
that. I can't believe this time when it was easy, I was like, what was different? In theory, I should be worse at this game now. What was different?
Yeah.
And that was it. I didn't remember what you could do. And then, so then they have a sort of a series of fights. I mean, you're behind Double H, and then I guess he sort of gets absorbed. You're fighting Double H's that are actually DOMs, which is cool. You hit them once and they turn into the thing, and you have to hit them again. But there's a whole bunch of them, so it's a little tricky. Whole bunch, like 5 or 6 or something like that. That's cool. I mean, it's a cool series of things. And then the final thing is, you fight it directly, and it'll kind of it'll teleport into different places around you. Felt like that was a pattern.
Yeah.
And then it did it again with the controls reversed, which was rude.
Yeah, I'm not good at that stuff.
I was not a fan of it either. I'm not bad at it, but I also hated it. Left to right was kind of easy, but back and forward was not.
Also camera related stuff was part of that challenge too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's blocking you, and
yeah, kind of a mess. But I get it, trying to do something different, and kind of a mind bendy, like it's messing with you kind of moment, I guess. I don't like, in the era, I don't hate it so much. I did have a bug.
Metal Gear kind of feel to it, to be honest.
It does, yeah. So you must have loved it. There was a bug for me, though, the first time I was in that fight, in the Double H part, where whenever I took damage, it would eat a K-Bup.
Oh, wow.
So I went through that fight, and I was like planning on having those. I had like 8 of them, and I just I'd take a hit, and whoop, gone. Another, like it would refill my health. I don't know if the button jammed or if the game freaked out or what was going on there. I had to redo all of the end section from before the trench run with the ship.
Oh, yikes!
Yeah, I wasn't too happy, I have to say. But I did it. I did it. I had to get that final achievement. So,
Oh, there wasn't it?
There were achievements for the HD remake on
got it.
PlayStation 3. So that's what I had.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get them all. Gotta get them all. Do you have anything else to say about the end of the game?
I'm looking at my notes, and one thing we didn't talk about in pre-show that I want to, we talked about the breadcrumbs and kind of like all the lore dump at the end. So I want to hit that later with talking about Beyond Good and Evil 2 stuff. But one of the things we didn't talk about that I was also very impressed with, and mostly happened during the ending section, I'll say, from the lighthouse destruction to the end, mostly, obviously all in cutscene, but they were not, I applaud them for not being shy about having touching moments
Yeah.
Because, it's the end of the game. A lot of times it's going to be a breakneck pace to the villain, whatever, and a lot of the sequences we just described were. But thinking about like the sequence with the dog in the lighthouse when she's against the wall, and there's a great moment there. There's a very protracted scene with Pey'j when you free him, and it ends up having important fiction, narrative stuff going on there that you find out later, but about like Jade having powers or something. But it just, games don't spend the time on that stuff usually, and actually let it sink in. And I think that the heart that you get from those moments does make this game memorable to people and stand out. It has, as we talked about, a bit of a cult following, even today. And so you can kind of see, I think that's why it sticks with people, right? Jade and Pey'j, especially, like, their friendship is really cool. And they give it time, which, oftentimes you're making games like that and they don't, they just rush through it, or they don't prioritize it or whatever.
Or they assume because you gesture at it, it's enough, and it might be, for a lot of stories, you don't actually need much more, depending on the type of game and like the amount of focus you're going to put on the narrative stuff. But you're right, in this game, having something that we would call, I guess, sentimental or, something along those lines, it's good. You have to invest the time for it not to feel totally treacly. And I really don't feel like this game does feel that way, like too sweet, saccharine, false, right? When we say saccharine, we mean false, more than anything. Sure, it's sweet, but it's falsely sweet. And this feels earned because they, like you said, they put in the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great point.
And it, it's probably the cinematic director, the writers, Michel himself, there's definitely an auteur element to this game. We just mentioned Metal Gear. So you can see where it could come from, but, in a place where I think that probably because Ubisoft has become a bit formulaic, since then, that I worry sometimes, and I don't play their games as much as you do and others do, but I just worry like maybe they've lost some of that spirit, unfortunately, I don't think the second one will ever come out, but.
Yeah, me either. I mean, one of the things I will say about Ubisoft is I think they've gotten better over time. I think they lost their way for a while with Assassin's Creed. Not that I disliked any of the games. I enjoyed all of them. But there were sort of points where I kind of lost track of who the character really was supposed to be. And I felt like with Odyssey and Origins, they really focused on those characters having stories, especially Origins, that were pretty touching. And the way Origins ended was, for me, it's a game that actually ends. I guess probably you can continue from that point, but I built up to like the final thing I was going to do was the final story bit. And it really hit home. I was like, oh, actually that really, really worked. And they had a very clever thing that tied it into the sort of iconography of the series as well. So I do think that they're getting better, and some, I'm sure some entries are better than others in that regard. And we, as we were talking about pre-show, I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima right now, which is a game very much in that model, and it gives a lot of room to, in particular, samurai sort of tradition or outlook, or the way they would interact with different sorts of people, or this character would. So all the moments actually ring true and really reinforce the character, which is, I think, kind of what is missing in a lot of the games, especially like the Far Cries, where like, this is some random, bro who was off on a vacation, right? And this happened to, Far Cry 2 being the exception, right? Which we played. But like 3, 4, 5, whatever, they're all kind of like, murder vacation, and you don't really have a sense of who the main character is, really. There might be some motivation for that character, but I think that's where, the lesser entries of Assassin's Creed and, and of the Far Cry series after 2 generally don't work for me as well on the story stuff. And that's why. I mean, they're just like not building in the things to reinforce who you actually are.
Yep. That makes sense.
So let's talk 2 before we talk takeaways. And I want to hear about this rabbit hole.
Well, I mean, there's so much to enjoy in 1, and I think it'll come up in my takeaways, but the world building in 1 is so good and so fresh, and there's cultural reasons why that is, or whatever, personal reasons from the creators or what have you, but it just stands out, and I just want more of it. And so I was like, I just couldn't remember the videos and the demos that they released so far. And of course, taking the time element out of it, because it is, 2008 being the first teaser. And then they had 2 cinematic trailers, which are amazing, by the way. You should go back. I mean, they're just cinematic trailers. And I say just because I'm typically a gameplay person. And so I don't really care as much about those, but they are very good. And they very much, those 2 big cinematic trailers that they put out do very much flesh out the world. They give you the version of the world from 1 that was in your head, what I mean, that you were filling in the blanks for.
Right.
They do that justice. They're very good.
I don't know if I've seen both cinematic trailers.
The second one is off the chain. Yeah. I mean,
is that the one with the huge ship and the monkey and
No.
There's one. That's the first one.
The monkey's in. Yeah, that's the first one. There's the teaser, which is the one in the desert, where Pey'j is snorting flies.
Oh, okay. And then there's the one where she's on the back
3.
of the car. Yeah,
technically 3. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, she's on the car.
Yeah,
that's the same one. The teaser.
Okay. Yeah.
She's sitting on the hood, and he's. I don't know. They're broken down. I guess I don't know what they're doing there, but
I think he's repairing the.
Yeah. And then the funny thing is that has a title sequence because it says "the pig" at the beginning of that teaser.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well then where's the next one? It's like, so anyways, but still a lot of character and again, very memorable. Then there's the one with the big ship in the city where the space monkey steals the thing and then the police chase him and all that stuff.
Right. Okay.
And then there's sort of like a reveal of Jade at the very end and they have that big ship. Then there's a third one that I won't spoil, but like a lot of stuff happens in, and there's another Jade reveal at the end that you're like, what is this about? Yeah. And so it's like, there's all these open doors that I want to go through that I can't. And then I did watch some of the gameplay teasers too, or trailer or demos. Of like the flying to space stuff, and they even have some third person combat stuff that I forgot about. They show the tech, so it's like, yeah. I mean, the game, I can see where this is. I mean, it's very Ubisoft, I think too. It's like a big open world game kind of stuff, but there's just the 2 stuff makes it. It proves to me that the world is very interesting and there's a lot going on that could be fleshed out, and I just want to play it, and so I just it's one of those times when it's like you're waiting for more content and you get it wherever you can, and all we got are his
various movies. I'll have to check out the third trailer because I'm pretty sure I have not seen that, so I wasn't aware.
I don't know who made those things, if it was internal or if they hired a CG house, but I think they're very good.
Yeah, no, I remember the one with the space monkey being chased and the whole time going, what is this? This is really wild. And then having it be revealed to be Beyond Good and Evil 2, I was like, what? What?
Yeah. Wasn't there also, I feel like there was a fourth so they had a 2017 and a 2018 gameplay demo that were like half hour. Okay. And they were like people playing them and they showed the tech. Michelle was doing one of them and then there's these other people doing another one for the second one. But wasn't there also a gameplay footage of her running through the streets, jumping, doing parkour stuff through the city? I feel like I remember that too. And that was meant to be
possible. But I may not have seen that either. I have not been I remember seeing the one with the monkey and being like, that game's never coming out.
Yeah. Well, and that was all just CG anyway. So
right. Yeah. No, I mean, I get it, but I was like, if this is what they're shooting for, I don't see this ever happening. Whenever that came out, and just being like, yeah, okay.
That would have been 2017, I think.
And just being like, yeah, okay, well, I really like Beyond Good and Evil, but I don't see there being a Beyond Good and Evil 2. And I just kind of wrote it off. So I never really went looking again, and so, and I don't always watch the Ubisoft, around E3. I sometimes catch it, sometimes don't. So, well, cool. Let's turn to takeaways now that we're 55 minutes in. I think we'll probably have a lot of overlap here, to be honest, but we'll see how it goes. Let's turn to yours first, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I really was just hitting it there with talking about the fully fleshed out, well, not fully fleshed out, but the like full realization in these CG trailers that were really well directed, I think, and written and created. But it's just the complete world building. What I put my note was complete world building with gusto, which is a silly statement, but the everything down to the character models and the art direction and just the construction and intricacy of just in this era, even when it is hard from a fidelity standpoint to give you a sense of something different. It doesn't, we talked about the Zelda influence and other game influences, but there isn't really anything like it, either. I still think of Anachronox a little bit. And I think of Final Fantasy IX a little bit too, from some of the sort of like unique feeling characters and the diversity of different types of characters and things. But it's just, especially now that I've finished it and seen the last, chapter, it's just such an interesting world, and they really, for the game in its era, to pull that off and to have me come away wanting more is a feat. It's really hard to do that for me to care. And I probably spent, nearly an hour looking at Beyond Good and Evil 2 stuff just because I didn't want it to end.
Yeah. So. That's a testament right there. Yeah. I mean, I obviously had world building on mine as well. I will extend it. I mean, I agree with everything you've said. So I don't want to add to that really, other than to say the animal photography and the suggesting even more world with just kind of like finding a way to incorporate that into everything. Like, this is also a planet with history. Like, why is it called the Slaughterhouse? What was that about? Why is it, why isn't it what it was anymore? And now there's a racetrack around it. Like, it's just, because of all the things that they do very explicitly and well to do world building, it actually makes things that probably don't make a lot of sense if they're in isolation, work, and, part of that I think is like we talked about with the animals, suggesting a whole taxonomy of animals in this world. There's all these different humanoid races, including sharks and, I guess a walrus, right? And, all the rhinos and goats and rabbits maybe, which also makes me think of Final Fantasy IX for that matter. But like just the idea of all of these, and of course a pig, alongside humans, it's not commented on. It's just the world. There's also that sense of like lived inness of just like, this is just the way things are. Like nothing's ever remarked upon, directly. The player just kind of soaks in it all the time, and that's what makes it, effective for me. So yeah.
Let alone the diversity in the actual Homo sapiens as well.
Right. True.
Is well done and just a lot of, I mean, they didn't phone it in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Give me number 2.
Number 2, we don't have to talk about long at all because we've hit it plenty in each and every episode.
Is it fix your damn camera?
Yeah. When cameras go wrong is what I put down. And just fix your damn camera, but also a very obvious statement. It's very, how much it can impact the game overall. I mean, this game could potentially have been great if it weren't for that, and so it's like, don't underestimate that. I'm not saying it's easy, to do. I'm not saying that I could have done better or anything, but it's, you can't underestimate it. Yeah. So
yeah. I mean, no argument. It was on my list too. It was worse than I remembered it being. So, and there were sections which pushed it way too far. Like we talked about one earlier. There were several times in the game where I was just like, why are we even doing this? Like, what are they thinking? I did not need this type of enemy if the camera was going to be this bad. Like, I didn't need this part of the experience if the camera is going to be this bad. Times when I would fail and things like that. And it sort of made me think too of like some things that they implemented where I'm like, why would you put that? Like, why do that? Like the fact that she can walk off any ledge and she'll just catch herself. It's like, okay, but why? Like,
I don't even think it's any edge, because some of them you can't do that.
Right. No, and so for story reasons, there are ones you can't. Yes, that's true too. But like when you go into the very first area for De Castellac, like I walked off an edge there and she caught herself. I did it at the top of the lighthouse. And I'm just like, why is this here? Like, all it does is give makes my heart do a little flip. And I go, oh, okay. And I'm annoyed. Like, why did you even let me do that?
And I don't even think
it's no different than not letting. Yeah, exactly. It's no different than not letting her fall off. So it's just what a weird choice. So there's just like there's something there of like that feels like akin to the camera, which is like just pushing things just a little too far for even what they had. Like they didn't. It doesn't add anything, that the fight with the jumping things, it doesn't add anything. And it just shows up how much worse the camera can be, and like how pointless it is to fall off the ledges, it's strange. So yeah, I'm with you on those for sure. And like extend it to like not knowing, it's a game where they say yes so much, you do still have to say no.
Yeah.
To some things where it's like, this is just a bridge too far. And I guess our bridge too far is different from theirs. So, that's a fair point. No accounting for French taste, right? So let's hear takeaway 3.
This one was hard for me to kind of summarize, but I'm calling it a break in the formula. And in parentheses, sort of thanks to the era that it was released in. And what I mean by that is, kind of going back to the points we've talked about over those series of how hybridized it is as a game, because we've mentioned references like Zelda, specifically Ocarina. We've mentioned, just Ubisoft's formula to some degree a little bit too. Like maybe this was some of the early pinnings of it. Although we talked about Prince of Persia coming out in the same year or recently, right? So they're very different. But and this relates to the camera takeaway too, because they were trying to do so many different types of things in one game, because it's a story game, but it's also like semi-open world, and there's combat, and then there's a lot of cinematics, and then there's collectibles and dungeons, and so in a way you could have just copied Ocarina, or you could have just copied Metroid or whatever, some specific sort of structure, but they kind of just made whatever it felt like. They just broke away from any of those. Yeah. And because they did that, it was going to be very hard for them to make a camera that would work for every situation. Yeah. But because they did that, it wasn't, I think that's why it's hard to sort of classify this game. Yes, you can say action adventure because that's like a very broad statement.
Yeah.
But it's not just an action adventure. You fly a spaceship as well, and have a dogfighting sequence. And so it's like in the era, this was possible for them to not follow a formula and just do whatever the hell they wanted. And maybe that's why 2 is never coming out, because they're doing the same thing there, maybe. But in this era, you have to pick your battles if you want to ship. And so I don't know. It's just, I applaud looking back at a game from this era and seeing, like, having a hard time pinning a formula on it, which is, I think, a good takeaway for me, but also kind of terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, mine is sort of similar, and it's more like keep the surprises coming. Like I think of just the way it constantly grows the space of what's possible in the game. From the hovercraft, like it's not, or you get into it and it's like, oh, we're just going to go out there. Oh, the engine's crapping out. We should go to the garage. And then you have a fight with a serpent that's flying over the water. It's like, okay, I didn't see that coming, and then you go and you get your ship repaired, and it's like, oh, now actually I can go pretty fast. That's pretty cool. And then it's like, how am I going to get out to that place I need to go? Oh, what? I can just make my thing jump? Oh, I can just make my thing fly? Oh, I'm taking it to space? Like, it just keeps broadening out the actual palette. Like, you keep thinking you have a sense of the whole thing, and they're just constantly saying, oh, no, we just showed you this much of it, which kind of ties into the world building as well. It's like a whole, you're a person who likes holistic games. And I think this game is very holistic in its vision for how they were going to make it. It's just not necessarily holistic in what it actually is, So I think there's I think that's, it's just a different kind of, holism, really. And it's also, I don't know. It's just refreshing. So,
what's that phrase that you always know that I never know? The reach and the grasp.
Your reach exceeding your grasp. Yes. Yeah.
I feel like this is a perfect example of that, right? Where you can see what they're reaching for, and it's glorious.
Yeah.
And it is in the cinematic trailers for 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's not playable, but
this is a game that people who played it look back on fondly. And probably forgive all the flaws. Like, they don't remember the flaws.
Oh, for sure.
And like, I didn't remember that the camera was as bad as it is, and then we were playing, I was like, oof, I forgot. But of course, at the time, a camera being not great wouldn't have really set it apart terribly either, so like it didn't necessarily stand out. I mean, it really stands out starkly against a game from today. I mean, I played the new Ratchet and Clank recently. I'm like, it's locked, as far as all that stuff goes, camera, whatever, and it's nailed it, and it does a lot of crazy stuff as well. Not as many things as this does, probably in some ways, but and this would not stand against that, today. But back then, I don't think so. I think you kind of forgave some of the flaws because you were like, well, any game might have that flaw. And you just don't remember them because it's just like, well, games of that era are just kind of a certain way. But the endless surprisingness of this game is one of those things that, I always look back on super fondly. I remembered that I went to space, even though I thought it was way more difficult than it was, et cetera. I remembered a weird boss battle at the end. I didn't remember the trench run, but I definitely remembered the hovercraft attaching and flying around and being like, oh man, you can fly around in this game. Don't love the flight model, but okay, that's fine. It's like, it's not a huge part of the game. It's just another moment where you're like, whoa, cool. Anyway, it's a cool game. This is a cool game with a lot of cool surprises in it. So very appreciated.
Yep.
All right. Well, we've done it. We've completed another episode of Dev Game Club number 387. So if you're thinking about 400, Tim, it's just a few months off.
Yeah. Wow.
That's scary.
Yep.
How much in my life? 8 years already. You can send us reviews through the usual channels. If we don't end up finding it and reading it, maybe shoot us an email, tell us where to find it. We love reading those things on the air. It's also good to, spread the word and such. And you can send us email at devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com. You can find us on Twitter, Threads, or Instagram at devgameclub. And he is twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
We kept you from your Final Fantasy this week, but I assume you are doing that again. Have you reached the world of Ruin? I'm trying to keep everybody up to date.
Let's see. No.
You have not? Okay.
No. What?
Were you busy last week? I don't know.
No, we played, but we're kind of finishing up that stuff. I
see.
got Mog.
I see. You're like going and picking up a bunch of like the side stuff because you have help, audience help. Got it.
Plenty of help.
Yeah,
I have a guide in the form of biostats.
yeah.
That is like literally, okay, do this. Okay, now do this.
Yeah, you need to go. Yeah, you may make sure you go do this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is good because I'm getting to see everything, right? And man, do they know this game, especially him. Yeah, so I got Mog, and we got all his abilities, his dances, which is just hilarious. And then I think I might commit to Gao.
Wow. Okay.
I think it's the way to go. I mean, I'm doing it for stream.
It's the way to Gao, anyway.
Oh, jeez. Okay, we're done here. I think I'm just going to have the most unorthodox party in the end. I was leaning toward min-maxing because Sabin is just overpowered, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get Mog. I'm going to get Gao. I'm going to get the Painter.
Yeah, the Painter,
and the Yeti. No. The Yeti and the Mime. Whoever that person is.
Wow. Okay. No idea.
And then see if I can finish the game that way. I think that'd be hilarious.
I think with the 4X, you can probably finish the party with whatever party you want. Probably finish just with Sabin at that point.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can probably find more of these exploits also on our fan run Discord, where you'll meet Bio and the rest of the crew. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, our merch store, the setting up of that Discord, and some of its administration are all by Mark Garcia, as well as some fun bots. Talk to June. Have fun checking your hands for signs of alien infestation this week, and good night.
Good night. It slipped it right in the end there.
That's right. That's my little post-credit scene.
Nice.